Embers Chapter 3. The days began to fall into a pattern. Walk, find someone, anyone, moderately friendly, offer assistance, and keep asking until they reached someone who needed them. To heal, or just to help carry firewood, or who knows what. Barter for something in return, sometimes coin, sometimes food, and sometimes odder things. Fish hooks, Uncle Iro muttered under his breath as a grateful farmer beamed at his cow pig. Ask him to throw in some cord, and it's worth it, Zuko muttered back. Spear hunting like a water tribe brat might not be up his alley, but give him a hook and line, and he could get somewhere. Doing something useful, keeping out of trouble. People left you alone on a ship if you were fishing. That's Fire Nation steel. The hooks should last a while. Not like Earth Kingdom iron. Lousy stuff. Swordsmiths forge their own steel, either with some of the better local ores, or sometimes ingots imported from the Fire Nation. Outside of that, local iron, well, there was a reason he could shatter it with a good heel strike. Uncle eyed him curious, but set to bargaining the man out of a roll of cord as well, and was delighted to accept a small round of cheese pressed on them by a relieved farm wife who was looking at short milk rations with her oldest daughter's first baby on the way. It ought to keep while we travel, Zuko thought, making his farewell bows with Uncle and heading down the road. And some fish will go after anything. I am surprised you agreed, nephew. Zuko rolled his eyes. Uncle, do you even know how much fish hooks cost? I've been paying attention to what you charge. We weren't cheated. Really? Really. Zuko hated shopping, at least as much as his uncle seemed to love it. Hated being where people could see and stare and whisper, but he hated being cheated more, which meant if he wanted to get it over with, he had to know exactly what he needed and how much it was worth. The walk was quiet for a while. Zuko focused on breathing, trying not to think about what they would do next. In and out, in and out. I did not expect you would be so willing to work with simple animals. Of course it couldn't last. It's easier to hide what we're doing, Zuko said shortly, which was worth cleaning off his boots, mostly. They found out the hard way that if he wanted to do anything more than just ease pain, he needed a fire to draw from. Using hot rocks, or even just his own fire, would work, but it left him dizzy and staggering, and on his feet only through sheer will to keep moving until Uncle found a spot for him to collapse for the night. No, if they wanted to keep this up, if they wanted to keep moving, keep alert, he had to have fire. And as long as their little pot of fire stayed out of sight of curious eyes, animals didn't ask questions. True, Uncle allowed. But you were also kind with the creature, even when she tried to bite. She didn't like me. She didn't lie about it. Zuko shrugged, unwilling to look at that thought too closely. People are crazy. Some are, yes. Iroh frowned. I wonder if that is the case where we are going. Oh no. Oh no. We're not just going further down the road. Well, we are. Zuko winced. waiting for the other boulder to drop. It seems our last client believes the source of his cow-pig's illness is on our way, the Lu Yu Ranch. They've appeared to have been having trouble since the night the moon was eclipsed. Iroh frowned more deeply. I wonder. Definitely a boulder, of the cliff-sized variety. Uncle, I don't want anything more to do with spirits. That does not mean they will have nothing to do with you, Prince Zuko. Right. Like the universe has ever been kind enough to just leave him alone. I don't have to go looking for them. That may be, Iroh allowed. Yet in this case, it may be better to find them before they find us. If Zhao unleashed more than he knew, those moments the world was out of balance. Spirits don't always distinguish between mortals well. Simply being of the Fire Nation may be enough to rouse their wrath. Which is an even better reason to go the other way. Well, it could be nothing but a sickness, Iroh said easily. Indulge an old man's curiosity. Who knows? He chuckled, patting his stomach. We may even get dinner out of it. Zuko sighed, trying to ignore his own rumbling hunger. They had been getting by, but not exactly well. This is a bad idea. Not that it would matter. He knew how the world worked. Turn his back on whatever this was, and it would be sneaking up on him in the middle of the night. Better face it head on, and hope he could improvise better than he had in the North Pole. And nothing has changed in their food or water. Iroh tried not to scowl. He had dealt with enough mounts in his time as a general to have a fair understanding of their afflictions. These black sores encrusting the hooves of the ranch's few cow-pigs and the claws and legs of the ostrich horses seemed unnatural. Have you brought any new stock in the past months, perhaps from river bottom, in a moister territory? First thing I thought of, Rancher So Lu Yu grumbled. No, there's been nothing, unless it's just been hanging around for 3 months waiting, after those Fire Nation bastards. Grim lips pressed together, cutting off his words. There was a raid? Iroh inquired, careful not to keep too close an eye on his nephew as the young man moved along the corral, letting the herd take his scent. Ironic that the blow Ozai meant to shame his son forever shielded him here, so long as no one looked too closely. If they knew their beasts were ill, it could explain why they sought yours. Nothing explains that filth! Iroh did not react, watching out of the corner of his eye as Zuko stiffened, and then walked on, heading into the stables to check on the sicker beasts. But it makes a lot more sense than a commune, the rancher allowed, healing welts across the corded muscle as he crossed his arms. I swear, as if our family would ever allow themselves to be dishonored enough to lead to that. Well, what do you think? A malevolent commune? A plague spirit would explain this. All too well. In the healed marks of fingernails on the burly rancher's arm, Zuko was right. This was a bad idea. I can promise nothing, Iroh said reluctantly. We may be able to help those who are less ill, and after that, if possible, I would like to walk the land they were pastured on. Perhaps we may find something. Uncle! Not strident, not demanding. He hurried into the stable anyway, somehow all the more worried. and winced, seeing the poor, wretched creature his nephew was dribbling water into, one beakful at a time, black feathers, tattered and molted in the straw, ravaged legs and body. Nephew, she's still alive! Don't waste your time! So's fist struck one of the stable's beams, raising dust. The rancher drew in a snarling breath, limping slightly. That's acai. She's Ping's favorite, my daughter. If she could stand, she would be trying to rip your throat out, boy. She's been crazy ever since the girl went missing. Ever since the moon went crazy. Our hopes for your daughter's safe return, Iroh said, courtly. Really, what else could one say in the face of that glare? Is she the most ill? The worst is still alive. Tough bloodline, I can say that much for Yomagumi stock. Too small for hard labor and a lousy timber, just like those damn firebenders. But they don't give up. A muscle in his jaw jumped, and dark eyes smoldered. I regard the handful of facts, and like none of them. So if she was the first to fall ill, where has she been? Spirits, that glare did not look promising at all. Just over here, Han pointed down the slope before them, where the lush greenery and a liquid chuckle betrayed a hidden spring. One of So's older sons. He was almost as tall and burly, and with a sour look on his face as he stamped his feet on the ground, obviously disgusted at actually having to walk somewhere. I hope it isn't the source. Some of the best water on the place, here. Is that why Asahi was here? Zuko asked, all too aware of time slipping away like grains of sand. If they could just get back soon, then maybe. He stomped on Hope, trying not to think about it. Looking for water? Yeah, that's right. Liar. And he wasn't even good at it. Zuko glared at his uncle. Do not let us keep you from your work, Iroh said generously. We can surely find our own way back. You do that, Hun said shortly. There'll be something left for you. We are much obliged, Iroh smiled, which lasted until the rancher was out of sight and out of earshot. Something is wrong here. Very wrong. Zuko frowned, unwilling to go any closer to what should be inviting water. It does feel wrong. Like the spirit oasis a little, but swampy. The energy of the worlds have been disturbed here. Iroh shook his head. And yet nothing seems to be tainted by human carelessness. He waved a hand. Let us spread out and search. If the spirits are disturbed, there should be something visible. Search, Zuko fumed after long minutes of fruitless efforts. I don't even know what I'm looking for. Rocks turned underfoot. Tired, hungry, and frustrated enough to spit sparks, he still had his balance. A skip back, and he avoided the unstable stones, if not the wave of decay that rolled out in their wake. Decay and... Iroh was there, holding him back. Come away, nephew. Come away. Zuko swallowed, unable not to look. It's pink, isn't it? I'm afraid it may be. Iroh's face was grave. We cannot be found here, nephew. No, that would be not good, especially since she hasn't been dead long enough for it to be the raid, has she? A month and a half, perhaps. Let us go. Iroh sighed. Well, now I know why there was an evil commune. A what? a plague spirit. Iroh led them away from the lonely cairn. They are drawn by many things, and the most certain way to attract them is the murder of one with child. But why would anyone? I fear I know, nephew. I fear I know. I will have to thank Madame Lin again for the coal. Iroh thought, taking a moment away from his careful arrangement of salted cut thorn branches to watch his nephew work. The first few times Zuko tried to heal had been, well, not quite disasters. His nephew had discipline. When he was calm, even if it was shaken by the disbelief the fire could ever heal, and the stark terror that he could mend instead of destroy. He had improved since, yes, but Iroh still had doubts anything could be done for Asha. Such deep-rooted illness. I underestimated my nephew's stubbornness. Iroh chuckled to himself. I should have known better. They will notice if you succeed. He had warned his nephew earlier, voice light with grim amusement he hadn't felt in a very long time. Once a general, always a general, it seems. Let them, Zuko snarled. She bit him, uncle. She was there. Iroh nodded then, acknowledging that likely truth, and set to work in this fallow pasture away from the main ranch, setting his commu trap and watching. Discipline, anger, and compassion. Iroh smiled to himself, watching his nephew call out veil after veil of fire, green flecked with warm gold. A leader needs them all. Asha lay quiet and mostly calm, black feathers only ruffling now and again to show her dislike of open flames. Weak as she had been, Iroh still had to hold her down for the first pass. Yet now she lied relaxed and still, peering curiously at the boy who was taking away the pain. Thank you, little one, Iroh thought gratefully. You help him more than you know. The last thorns and stones in place, the old general straightened, looking over the outline of the spirit maze for any gaps that were not part of the pattern. It may not even come. Perhaps. But then again, his nephew was currently stealing one of its most stubborn victims out from under its repulsive nose. It should at least be interested, which will not make my nephew pleased. But on the other hand, something the young man could fight might do him a world of good, and communes could be fought. They could be beaten. Whether there was a spirit or not, his nephew seemed to be expecting trouble. Zuko had already packed their gear for a midnight evacuation, which was most likely wise no matter what the night might bring. Iroh didn't think the Liu Yu family knew they had noticed, but as they were making their way back to the ranch, Zuko had spied Hun riding off to town at twilight. It could be innocent. An important errand? A girlfriend? A request for a squad of soldiers? Perhaps Zuko's dire outlook on the world was contagious. Or perhaps, Iroh thought, seeing a shadow move towards them from the stables, it was simply a belated recognition that he could not depend on Zuko's younger ears in the midst of healing. Nephew, someone is coming. Almost done! Another wash of fire, and Zuko let the flames fade, reaching out so Asahi could sniff still warm hands. He glanced towards the approaching woman, but kept his focus on the uncertain seed as she gained her feet. How's that, girl? Shh, it's just me and Uncle. Nothing to worry about. Madame Lin. Iroh nodded as the rancher wife came towards him with a lidded basket and wide eyes. Is that breakfast, so we need not trouble you when we take our leave? She looked at his careful pile of thorns and stone, and Iroh knew she understood. No, she said in a worn, worried voice, opened the lid and drew out dark clothing. Fire thorns, Iroh observed, catching glints of wild silk embroidered with protective patterns. Glossy wood along the edges of a fine green scarf, ruby rust on the hems and sleeve seams of a pine dark robe. You must have been working on this for quite some time. They were from Ping, Len admitted. We were having so much ill luck since the raid, and I just wanted to. She swallowed and looked away. I finished them a few days after she disappeared. If you are going to face the commune, please, they might help. They may indeed, Iroh said graciously, draping the scarf about his neck before he took Ashahi's reign. Just as well for them that Earth Kingdom women tend to take after their men, taller and more solid than most in the Fire Nation. Hands on the robe, Zuko hesitated, obviously uneasy. If you made this for your daughter... Ping is beyond its age now, Iroh said with quiet compassion. You are not. Ling's gaze whipped to him, wide and wild and broken, with a terrible wonder as she finally recognized the black steed alive and well beside him. Oh, Ashahi! She pressed a fist to her lips, eyes closed, voice thick with tears. Are you spirits come to take your vengeance? Agni, let Zuko keep his heart for once, Iroh prayed. If we are, you know what you have done. He shook his head. You knew she was not missing. You don't understand. The break in her voice was awful to hear. The town knew. They knew. It wasn't enough we had to rebuild what burned. But my daughter! Yes, she was your daughter, Zuko said angrily, clenching fists and shifting swords in sheath from hip to back where the robe would not interfere with his draw. Who cares what the town knew? You should have protected her. I tried, a desperate wail. We thought it would pass. Then the rumors and the whispers, and no one would give us fair prices anymore, and Hun's marriage contract was going to fall through, and we were going to send her away, where she would be safe, where no one knew. It was all arranged. She would have left in just a few days. When the moon became as blood, and your husband decided he had no more use for pity, Iroh said sternly. I didn't know. She fell to her knees, dripping tears. I swear I didn't know. You didn't not know, Zuko started, disgusted, paused, glancing warily into the night. It is near. Build up the fire, Iroh ordered, grabbing a stem of thorns. Do not let it touch you. Tear-soaked ground erupted, and he threw. Ah! Salt! Salt! A high, chittering voice like the mole rat it resembled, if mole rats grew to be the size of a man. Its fur was sleek and glossy gray, as if in perfect health, and yet eaten away with the same sores that afflicted the ranch. Stay back and protect Madam Lin, Iroh warned Zuko. I will deal with this creature. Oh, will you, old fire? Eyes like Azula's flame sneered at them all, one by one. Old smoke, all your hopes burn to ash. Rotten willow breaking in grief's storm. Oh, so tasty. And a hissing laugh. Little dragon, barely hatched, and no wings to protect you. I can protect myself, Zuko flared. But he held back, even without Iroh's raised hands to stop him. Ling was whimpering, too pale to scream, and Zuko would never be so heartless to leave her unprotected. An Earth Kingdom woman, a peasant, and at least a reluctant accomplice to murder. And the Prince of the Fire Nation offered her mercy. I have one brother. Iroh knew, quiet pride warming him. The battle may be long and dark, and he may doubt himself, but he will never be yours again. Leave, he warned the spirit in his next breath. You have no more place here. Ping's murder is known to those who will see justice done. Lin Lu Yu will denounce her husband to the law, and that poor girl will have the proper rights. Begone! Lin Yu! Another hiss of laughter. Old smoke! Old fool! Why would she, when it was her word against theirs? No! Lin gasped. My sons would never. Oh, they will, broken Willow. Your plan meant they had to live with their shame. A dead sister is nothing, hidden away, forgotten. A living child of fire to call them uncle? Ah, salt, you dare! Iroh dipped the thorny branch back into his pot of salt water, ready to sprinkle the beast again. We know the truth, he said grimly, and there will be a reckoning. You have solved your purpose. Your time in this world is past. Silly Snoke! Teeth gleamed at him. You are no earthbender! Your maze only touches the surface! A blast of dust, and the beast burrowed out of sight. I did not expect that. Iroh thought worriedly. What could have... The calm mew erupted under Zuko's feet, but the young prince was already moving. A leap spin of steel took him away from the ground and cost the swift little monster half its whisker and one ulcerated toe. The scream knifed through the night, a caterwaul of rage and revenge. If the Lu Yus did not know something was amiss before, they will know now. Iroh blinked, catching a glint of fire. Zuko knew they had to stay hidden. He agreed not to bend unless the need was dire. He did not. Spirit fire, invisible to ordinary sight. It gleamed around his nephew from sheer force of will, glinting off blades, blazing high on protective fire thorns. The sickly gray power of the commune tried to cling to steel, to climb and rot tempting flesh, and it burned away, vanquished. Hissing, the beast turned to Iroh, charged him, teeth and claws and flailing naked tail, vanished into the earth, just ahead of salt water. Where did it go? Zuko demanded, scanning the ground for movement. It wishes to cause pain, Iroh said grimly, backing up to his nephew and the trembling woman. But at heart it is a coward, and we can defend ourselves. Nephew, no! Too late, Zuko was already swung onto Ashihi's back and was racing for the ranch, just behind the mocking laughter. Don't know why I'm doing this. I thought my family was messed up, but these guys? They deserve whatever the commune's going to do. Only it wouldn't stop there. Zuko knew it. Already the animal plague was starting to spread off the ranch into innocents. If it got into people, not gonna happen. Ashahi moved like a dark wind. Ping must have loved her. You tried to get away, didn't you, Ping? You fought him. Your own father. I wish I was that brave. The ranchers were out and angry, lanterns and spears in hand. You! So growled. What are you doing on one of my mounts? Thief! The commune, you moron! Zuko snapped, racing to track tentacles of rippling dirt. There! In front of them, too far for swords, the ground erupted. Sorry, Uncle. Zuko slashed the air, flyer blazing out to smash the spirit away from its target. Ashe squawked in protest, hopping sideways, which was just as well, as Sho's spear sliced through where they had just been. Firebenders! Plague spirit, you rockhead idiot! Zuko had twisted off of Ashe, blade sweeping to intercept screaming teeth. Do you really want to fight me instead of this? From the number of spears jabbing his way, they really did. It's time to stop being subtle. Earth was solid, rooted, stubborn, and that's how they came at him. Spear points bristling like thorns, eyes wise and glazed as if they could ignore the malevolent spirit by sheer will. Solid, stubborn, predictable. He could see exactly how to slice to leave them defenseless. A sway of Waterbender's body, trapping his spearmen in ice. Zuko echoed that flow of memory, twisting away from the jabs with inches to spare. Spears struck unnatural fur, bounced off as if the spirit were made of steel. What the? Die, little dragon! The Kammu leaped for him, a whirlwind of teeth and claws. But he had fought the wind before. He had fought the Avatar. This creature wasn't even close. One blade slashed fire, knocking it back. Its twin cut behind him, spearheads falling like iron hail. He somersaulted over the porch rail and brought a heel down, blazing fire into the deep wooden planks, searing through, intercepting the spirit as it burrowed. Amazing how such an awful screech was music to his ears. Then a more human howl, followed by blazing curses. Damn bitch hen! Aw, Ashe had bit the bastard again! Shame she missed his throat. Earth whirled under the hole, ringed in blazing timbers. The Kammu was trying to burrow away. No, you don't! Zuko yanked his arms up, feeding the rage and the pain and the betrayal into fire already blazing. The fire roared, consuming the wood like flash paper, whirling as he swept his arms across a firestorm, drilling down, burning the soil itself, consuming it in white-hot rage. This maze isn't just on the surface, Spirit. The Kammu's voice screeched higher and higher, itching at his ears like the calls of cricket mice, cutting off with a sudden sense of absence. Flimsy gray vapors rose from the flames and shredded away. It is over, nephew. Zuko staggered, painfully glad for the firm hand gripping his shoulder. Everything ached, and the world had an unsettling tendency to gray out at odd moments. Uncle, are you all? Groaning ranchers were scattered on the ground behind them, like so many fallen leaves. At least one beheaded spear had been further shattered by an annoyed blade hand strike. And Ashe was standing over So, hissing, hungry and exhausted. Zuko grinned. Uncle coughed into his fist, eyes ruefully amused. I think perhaps it would be best if we go. My house! Swiftly, Iroh added dryly. Zuko stepped back, finally taking in the blazing building. The ranch house was already crumbling into itself, flames vining out over the attached fences. The very ground smoldered as the fire creeped through. Wincing, Zuko lifted a hand. Let it burn. Zuko swallowed, sheafing his dough. Uncle? Fire cleanses. If the town will not exact justice, I believe this shall suffice. Zuko grinned, glancing down the road, lanterns, torches, and the glint of iron and steel. They may not agree with you. Oh dear, Uncle Iroh murmured. They are armed, Zuko thought. They are fresh, fresher than we are anyways, and we don't want to hurt any of them. Deciding, he whistled. Asahi perked up her head, stalking over towards them. Catching her rein, Zuko glanced at Uncle. Iroh eyed the ostrich horse, glanced at the semi-conscious ranchers, and then the aghast Madam Lee, looked at the roaring flames, and sighed. Leaving his uncle to raid the stable for tack, Zuko ran for their supplies. Asahi saddled. Iroh wasn't far behind. "Where are we going, nephew?" "Anywhere but here." I should have been more specific. He should have known better, really. They had hook, line, and bait. Of course they would end up in a dry waste where water is scarce and fish even scarcer. Not to mention a town full of scared citizens and a bunch of thugs masquerading as a home guard. At least Sila's stew had been filling, though he really wasn't sure about the job he had done on their barn roof. Didn't match the other singles at all. But even Uncle could admit that it might be better to drop the traveling healer act for a few towns, just in case the Liu Yus had spread the word, no matter how hungry it left them. The robe was still wrapped up tight in one of their saddlebags. Uncle insisted he hung on to it, for luck. I hate luck. "Why, Uncle?" Zuko had asked, as they rested in the grass to work out their next move. Not that there was much destinations to go from here that didn't end up in a desert. "We all hit it, but they couldn't cut it. It doesn't make sense." Lying back, Iroh laughed softly. "I thought you did not wish to know more about the spirits, Prince Zuko." "I don't," Zuko insisted. "And why do you keep calling me that? We're in the middle of nowhere." "Because it is important." Iroh tapped his fingers together, choosing his words. "Many believe that strong benders run in families. To a certain extent, that is true. Bending is a gift from the spirits, and those with strong spirits often raise strong children." Zuko frowned and sat up. "If that's true, why wipe out the air nomads? What was the point?" "The point was to destroy the Avatar and remove the knowledge of airbending from the world, so the cycle would remain broken," Iroh said gravely, raising to look him in the eye. "Unless a few sky bisons have hidden themselves in the farthest mountains, they are gone. Any who are born with the gift have no one to teach them." He chuckled. "Though I have heard some interesting stories of the Earth Kingdom refugees we saw in the Northern Air Temple." "I don't want to know." Iroh raised an eyebrow. Zuko glared and tried not to think. "We saw them gliding, using the wind. That's all. If I knew anything else, if Father knew, I might have to. No, not my problem. The Avatar's my problem. That's all." He let his gaze slide aside, feeling oddly guilty. "So what does bending have to do with swords?" "It was not your swords that cut him, young prince. It was the strength of your technique, and of your will." Iroh smiled at him. "I would not have risked dealing with a spirit bent on malice if I did not know we both had the strength to survive the encounter." Zuko swallowed. "I'm not strong. Not like you." "We must teach you more history," Iroh mused. "Though finding the scrolls I seek outside the Fire Nation may be difficult. Even before Fire Lord Sozin, the Avatar could not be everywhere at once. People had to deal with some spirits on their own. And those benders with the strongest will, who could defend their people from evil, often became great leaders, and their children after them. That is your heritage, Prince Zuko, and mine. No banishment, No decree, no shame. He reached out. Zuko stiffened. With a sigh, Iroh let his hand fall. None of that can change who you are, my nephew. You are strong. Here. He tapped gently over his own heart. Never forget that. Never forget who you are. His mother's face disappearing into the night after Azula had said those horrible lies. But Azula's stronger. Azula is more skilled. Iroh said bluntly, the two are not the same. Azula could not even attempt what you are beginning to master. Zuko glanced at Ashahi, happily chopping grass, shrubs, and the occasional cricket mouse, looked away. Like that would impress my father. The Fire Lord would not be pleased. Iroh admitted, my brother is a very suspicious man, and I understand why your mother did not bring her skills to his attention. You may not have time for my proverbs, nephew, but I think Ozai had learned one too well. All medicines can be poisons. The earth crumbled. Mother could heal. Grandfather died. Everything I've done to protect you. Zuko! Zuko! Uncle's hands were on his shoulders, shaking him. Agni, you are as pale as death. What is it? No, no, it can't be. Azula always lies, Zuko whispered. It is best to assume so. Iroh studied his face, eyes grave. Nephew, tell me what is wrong. Zuko swallowed. Grandfather was old, wasn't he? Almost 100. Iroh acknowledged, though that was not always old in strong benders. King Bumi of Amashu is at least a decade older, and is still an earth-bender to be reckoned with. Sozin himself lived a century and a half, vibrant to the end. My father seemed well before I left, but much can change in 2 years. He frowned. Zuko, tell me. Zuko shook his head. No, she wouldn't. But she said, and I'm like her. I'm like her, and don't hate her, please. Don't hate me. Paling, Iroh let him go. I'm going to be alone again. Like after Mother. I don't care if I deserve it. It hurts. Zuko. Iroh's voice was calm, like a sea before the storm. Why do you believe your mother could do such a thing? It's my fault. You are 10. Still that same ominous calm. How could it ever be your fault? He was going to kill me. Zuko swallowed hard, closing his eyes. If he didn't look, he wouldn't see. If he didn't look, he could pretend Uncle didn't hate him. Just for a little longer. That's what Azula said. But she always lies. Please. There was a tremor in Iroh's voice that made him want to curl up and hide. Start from the beginning. Tell the truth. That's what Ping needed, wasn't it? Uncle always looked after me. He should know. He shouldn't have to stay with the monster. Eyes shut, fists clenched. Zuko looked back into memory. It started after we heard about Luten. Father went to meet with the Fire Lord. Azula wanted to hear what they said, so she pulled me behind a curtain to listen. Father, he said your line had ended, and he had heirs. He should be the next Fire Lord. Zuko swallowed. I didn't know what happened next. Grandfather was mad. I was scared. I ran away. Iroh sighed, but Azula did not. She came into my bedroom later. She said, "Dad's gonna kill you." Really, he is. She said Fire Lord Aslan was angry that he told father he should know the pain of losing the firstborn. Oh, Agni, Iroh whispered. And then Mom came in and took away. And then she woke me up in the middle of the night, and I didn't even know to say goodbye. And she was gone, and grandfather was dead. He wasn't going to cry. He wasn't. Mom said she did it to protect me. It's my fault. Zuko. A wagon rumbled. Zuko shot to his feet, reaching for his blades. Sela faced Taunt with all too familiar fear. You have to help. Who? Us? You've got a whole town full of real Earth Kingdom neighbors to ask, lady. We're leaving. It's Lee. Of course it was. And of course they were the only armed so-called citizens for miles. What's wrong with these people? Didn't they realize that if you sent men off to war, you made damn sure the women knew how to defend themselves? How to defend their children? Like Mom fought for me. Arg. How did he keep getting into these things? You are a kind and generous woman, Madam Sela. Iroh thought calmly, ensconcing with a length of chain from the blacksmith's forge, while his nephew provided a distracting spectacle to the watching townfolks. But I do wish you had come along just a few minutes later. His nephew might have buried his pain under his determination to rescue the boy, but he still believed that Iroh should hate him. And there had been no time to correct those awful fears. Now Zuko fought well, but he fought alone. And while Iroh had no fear of the young prince against a number of ordinary thugs, to face both numbers and an earthbender without giving himself away, well, it might be difficult. But he is not alone. The earthbender's hammer lifted for a mighty blow. Chain twirled around his head. Iroh threw and yanked. It never ceased to amaze me how many benders fail to train with nothing but their arms. Zuko's spin kick caught the earthbender under his chin, and the man crumpled like a wilted flower. Smiling in satisfaction, Iroh cut that trouble-making young scamp Lee free. Boo! Cheater! Delivering one gap-toothed boy into Sela's anxious arms, Iroh turned towards the mobs, incredulous. Surely these people were not about to turn on his nephew simply because. What do you think you can do against our guards in a fair fight, pretty boy? The closest thing the town had to a village elder, who had been too quick to bow to the guards while they were standing. For an instant, Iroh admired his nephew's self-control. Not a flicker of flame or a breath of steam to be seen. Amazing, given that he himself was more than inclined to turn back the wheel of time a decade and start setting strategic points on fire. Enough of that. If you are depending on warriors who can only win a fair fight, Iroh declared, pitching his voice to carry, then you are all doomed. The Fire Nation has no interest in fighting fair. No good general was. A fair fight meant a chance you would lose, and then all your dead would haunt you for nothing. Reaching back to his nephew's side, Iroh said ruefully, Some days, he said, voice low, one can only make a strategic retreat. Zuko stared at him, stunned, disbelieving, incredulous. Hope flickered in gold eyes like embers of a burning joystick. Mounted double, they left the cat calls and anger behind. I do not hate Lady Oza. Reins in hand, Zuko stiffened, forced himself to relax. He was your father. True. Iroh aloud, heartsick. But no father should ask what he asked of his son, and no son should ever grant such a horrible request. He sighed. I hope my father only meant a line adoption, to give you to me as an heir in Lutin's place. But it seems your father at least thought otherwise. That, or Ozai simply couldn't live with the insult of being passed over as heir for a boy he thought weak and useless, and had decided to rid himself of the shame. Directly. Suddenly, that horrible Agni Kai made far too much sense. How long have you wished him dead, brother? How long? But past was past, and Zuko already carried enough pain. I think what I would have done had the Fire Lord asked me to harm Lutin, Iroh said soberly. And though I feel pain and grief, I do not blame your mother. Your death, or Fire Lord Aslan's, or her flight, those were her choices. And brave and cunning as she was, I do not think she would have survived fleeing the heart of the Fire Nation with you at her side. Ozai would have hunted you down, both of you. Iroh swallowed the anger, if he could not hide the grief. I do not hate her, and I do not hate you. Zuko glanced back, checking for pursuit. So far, there was none. The villagers content to merely run trouble out of town. Azula. Yes? Never mind. Such poisonous words are like knives in the dark, nephew, Iroh said gravely. Force them into the light, and they have lost their advantage. Zuko swallowed, and drew Ashihi to a halt. Dismount, checked her feet quickly, and started walking, leading the black hen. She would quote that proverb a lot, and looked at me. All medicines are poisons. Yes, he could see it. Agni help him. You believe she knew of Lady Ozar's skill. She was Azula. Zuko's hands fisted on the reins. She would do things, leave them bleeding, and I couldn't. He shook his head violently. At least, she got bored with that after a while. Oh, Zuko. His nephew was not a fool. Try to heal and mark himself as a traitor, as he knew Urza would have been marked? Try and fail as a young firebender with no one to correct such a delicate technique would have failed? It is not a wonder why he feared to try, that he fought that fear when I asked, and when Ashahi needed him. Ozai, you are a fool. Why did you not tell me? Who was going to stop her? Zuko said bitterly. She has a pattern. She starts on something, and she keeps doing it more and more until you blow up, and then she does it even more. But if you can act as if it doesn't matter, like you don't care, sometimes she gets bored. He swallowed. I'm not good at keeping still. Acting like I don't care. I should be better. You had fooled most of your crew for 3 years, Iroh thought warily. Do you remember the storm? I believe your men preferred to follow a prince who honestly risked their lives rather than a ruler who executed those who hesitated at her whims. That earned him a troubled glance back before his nephew's jaw clenched silent. Iroh hid a smile. Certainly a prince commanded by right, but if your men followed you out of their own will, as well as duty, that was a tie not lightly broken. not among their people at least. And I do not doubt that is part of what Fire Lord Sozin played on to lead us to destroy the Air-known Mans. We of the Fire Nation are loyal to the death. And when the Airbenders would change their mind and shift, as history said was their way, those of us who might have counted them as friends would have felt betrayed. An unearned betrayal drove his people to desperate acts. If history had not sufficed to teach him that, 3 years on his nephew's quest had driven that point home to heart. Do you think she suffered? Zuko's face was set, and he would not look back. I heard. Some people hang on for days before. Heard indeed how Azula had used that to prey on his nephew's mind. Perhaps he was better off not knowing. If she had died that way, there are limits to what my brother could conceal. Zuko looked at him then, grim and hurting. She betrayed the Fire Lord. If she did it as your mother, Iroh said bluntly. Her loyalty is to her children, her husband, and her family. So it has been since the first firebenders earned their skills under dragon's wings, and so it will be until the nations are no more. To kill her own beloved father, yes, that betrayal would wound her soul to the grave. But Fire Lord Aslan, it is quite possible she survived. Then where is she? If I knew my nephew, I would help you find her. Because she is your mother, and so holds her own claim on you. Though I do not do so without help, for my sake as well as hers. I do not think I would be gentle, asking about that night, and about why she left you behind. Maybe you're wrong, Zuko said quietly. Maybe she was loyal. He stared down the road, seeing nothing. Have you seen someone die like that? In war, anyone's loyalties may be strained past bearing, Iroh admitted. I have seen traitors' deaths, and they are not pleasant. If my aide had not nursed me, and kept silent, well... So how can she post those lies, calling us traitors? Zuko said fiercely. You're the Fire Lord's brother. You'd be... He cut himself off with a breath of irritated steam. But so killed Ping, and she was his daughter. And how could he? I've seen these people, and sometimes they act like decent people, like Sela, but others. Other nations are not bound, as we are, Iroh acknowledged, and they do not risk their lives when those bonds are broken. So if Azula posts a reward for traitors, they'll believe it? Zuko muttered something under his breath, almost too low to hear. Iroh stifled a rueful laugh into a deliberate cough. 3 years aboard a ship might have done good for his nephew's spirit, but they had wreaked unholy havoc on a prince's vocabulary. Perhaps he will listen now, if I unsettle. It is not impossible. We have been gone for some time. It is likely Fire Lord Ozai has considered any illness of mine, or yours, might have been hidden by our crew. They haven't! No, worse luck. And while it is rare, some firebenders have survived. General Jang Jang, his nephew nodded grimly. I have known of others. Carefully. Sometimes when you are trapped by two bonds, one must break. From need, from fear, from finding one's loyalty was gifted to one not worthy, and you must take it back. Listen to me, nephew. Listen and heed. I know where my loyalties are. As do I, Prince Zuko. Unfortunately. Patience, the elderly general reminded himself, as he had for years. Fire wishes to burn through the enemy, but you must be like water, wearing away stone. Easy enough to tell himself years ago, when the search for the Avatar had been a fruitless quest. With the Airbender return and Sozin Comet on its way, things are beginning to become difficult. At least we have not seen the bison since the North Pole. Zuko stopped, stiffened, dropped to one knee and studied the road. Stood with a tuft of familiar fur. If there had been a spirit in front of them, I would have set it on fire.